The GDP numbers for Canada have come out and they are trending in the right direction. For the past 2 consecutive months, Canada has seen an increase of 0.1% for the country's GDP. This comes right after US GDP numbers, which were also up from their previous report. Keep in mind that GDP is a very important statistic because it measures the overall health and activity of a country's economy. The next release will be 1 month and 1 day from today on November 29th. Now let's go ahead and take a look at a Canadian dollar pair inside of the EdgeFinder. Alright, so here we are, of course, inside of the EdgeFinder, and today we're going to be taking a look at CAD CHF, the Canadian dollar Swiss franc pair. This is our second highest buy for a Canadian dollar pair. The first highest buy is actually CAD USD. There's something coming sooner than you might expect. Are you ready for it? But we've been talking so much about the US dollar, and we haven't talked much about the Swiss franc, so I figured that it would be interesting to take a look at some Swiss franc numbers while we're also talking about the Canadian dollar. So this is still a good pair to look at. We have a score of +4 here, giving us an overall buy bias, and COT data is actually a neutral 0 score, so we can take a look at that right down here over in our sentiment section. COT data, or institutional trader data, shows us the Swiss franc sits at 33.28% long and 66.72% short, while the Canadian dollar sits at 38.74% long and 61.26% short. So fairly close to each other, both leaning towards the short side, smart money wise. So that's going to give us a 0 score there. Retail traders are actually agreeing with the COT data, 26% long, but 74% short overall for the pair there. That's going to give us a +1 score here because we are leaning in that sell direction. And then of course we also have our scanner output summary here that I'm going to mention just really quickly, that gives a written summary of why we score things the way that we do. So feel free to pause the video and take a look at that if you are interested in getting an explanation for why we score these things the way that we do. Now, seasonality also has a +1 here. We can take a look at the numbers for October right here. And we can also see that historically speaking, moving into the later months of the year, the last 2 months of the year, there's downward trends both in the all-time and last 5-year average. We can also see that from September to October that there is a rise, historically speaking, both in the all-time average and last 5-year average, moving an upward trend, a rise from September to October. And we can actually see that being the case here as well. In our current year average from September to October, there was in fact an upward trend here. So this seasonality is always really interesting to me because some things just tend to stay the same. You know, when the all-time average and the last 5-year average are looking pretty similar, and then you see that current year average follow, it's just interesting to see that historically speaking, some of this stuff just tends to move similar ways throughout the year. Trend reading is a +2. And what that means is that based on the past couple days or couple weeks, how has this market been trending? Has it been trending upwards? Has it been trending downwards? And a +2 score means that it is trending upwards fairly heavily. A +1 score would mean a slight trend upwards, but a +2 score means that this market is trending upwards. Lastly, our last 4 scores right here, we have GDP growth with a score of +1, inflation and unemployment with scores of -1, and interest rates with a score of +1 as well. And so we can take a look at our fundamentals section over here really quickly. Canadian dollar 0.8% GDP growth, and the Swiss franc is 0.3% GDP growth. Want access to our free FOREX course? Fill out the form in the description below to get access for free today. Read up on technical strategies, fundamental analysis, and risk management tips our team uses here at A1 Trading. Be on the lookout for an email from one of our team members with access to the free course. The Canadian dollar unemployment 5.2% and the Swiss franc 1.9%. Inflation for the Canadian dollar 6.9 compared to Swiss franc sits at 3.3. And lastly, interest rates for Canada sit at 3.75 compared to 0.5 here for the Swiss franc, giving us an overall 3.25% bias towards the Canadian dollar. And that, of course, is just the difference between these two numbers here. Go ahead and take a look at the price chart as well. Today is October 28th. And we can see here that this orange line, this is our price forecast right here. So what this is based on all of the data that we're pulling in, it's giving an estimate of some price points that we could potentially see this currency being around. Not these numbers for sure, but around these numbers here. So this green line means that if this market trends upwards even more, if it becomes even more bullish than it already is, we're looking at this green line here. If it kind of stays on this same trajectory, then we're looking at some of these numbers here. And if it starts to dip a little lower, then we could be looking at some of these red numbers here. Okay, that was a quick look into CAD CHF here in the EdgeFinder. Remember, if you want the EdgeFinder for yourself, you can find that in the link in the description. It is a super useful tool for fundamental technical traders, any type of trader that you are. We pull in every sort of data metric that we can so that you have the most information and data possible so that you can make the most accurate trades that you can. And now we're going to hand it over to TraderNick and Miko with some analysis from today's live stream.
CAD Swiss open, still open actually. If you guys were here yesterday, then you know we were pretty much in the same camp yesterday. CAD Swiss was rejecting this previous high, and which you look at here is you see, okay, we have lots of wicks up at the top here. Right. And a lot of times what will happen is people will say, hey, this is massive rejection. It's time to actually sell CAD Swiss, which, makes sense. If you're talking just purely support resistance, you do have a clear level of resistance there. But what we talk about often is that a market that's truly in momentum, right, is, especially if it's in an uptrend, we're actually going to expect that consolidation and resistance levels are actually going to break out at some point or another, right? If the trend is going to continue. If you're talking about an upward trend, then when we come into levels of resistance, we're not betting that resistance is going to hold, right? That's a tough game to play because you're just talking about trying to fight an uptrend. For me, it's actually the opposite. Price comes up to a resistance point, but the trend is very strong to the upside. I'm just waiting for it to break. It might not break. It might change and reverse, but that's not something I think that we can all just, uniformly know before it happens. For me, it's watching it and saying, okay, well, I have this CAD Swiss trade open. I've had it open since the bottom of this range. We picked it up long here around 72, 76. Still just going with that little momentum that we've been talking about on the CAD Swiss. I mean, it still looks healthy. And so when we look left, yes, we have resistance here, but what I'm looking for is willing to hold this thing potentially over the weekend to try and get a close. So what I'd be looking for, let's see, can I find a shape or something that I can do with this? I don't want to use the rectangle because it won't really work. Let's see. Maybe we'll just do this. We'll just use the path feature. So what I'm looking for on CAD Swiss is I'm watching to see if we can get a true break, right? So I'd like to see, like, let's say this arrow is a candle. I'd like to see this arrow or this candle close outside of these recent highs, right? So if that can close outside of those recent highs, then we have really clearly made a strong break of this resistance. In fact, I think that that's really generous. We might actually be able to scale that down. So let me show you. Like, what we have is the most recent attempts to close here, right? So sellers were strong here. We just want to see sellers fail there, right? So what I'm looking for is a close probably outside of these and these highs, right? So we had rejection 1, rejection 2. What we're looking for is a close outside. If that close outside happens, then to me, that would be a confirmed breakout to the upside. And in that case, we're looking to trail stops, probably at the very least up above here. In fact, I actually don't mind the idea of potentially looking to trail stops today. For those of you who are inside of the VIP group, I will be watching CAD Swiss to potentially trail stops. We're floating $440 on the trade, which is a good little spot to be in, so I can't complain. And like I said, that trade alert was shared inside of our Discord channel. So if you're not already in there, here's the full breakdown. What I try and do within, my trade alerts, and Frank and Ivan do the same thing in our service. We don't believe in just blind signals. We like to explain and to break down trades that we're taking and why in full detail. So if you were to pause this video, or if you're inside of the Discord, you can just go navigate over to Nick's Trades here, and you can read through exactly why I picked up this position long, why I put my stop loss where I did, the EdgeFinder reading behind it, all of that good stuff. So if that's something that would be beneficial to you, I want to invite you guys, at the very least, join us inside of the free Discord. If you don't want to pay anything, I understand, but at least join us inside of the free group so you can get some trade ideas and keep up to date with some of our latest thoughts.
EuroCAD was actually the bonus pair on my weekly analysis this week. We're talking about for potential buys for this one if we remained above 1.34. And as you can see, we stayed just about above 1.34, respecting to that trend line and that bullish engulfing. And as you can see, a really nice move to the upside after a nice breaker of that resistance there around 1.35500. So EuroCAD, what next? Is back inside this range here. So typically is a little bit messy in this area. We haven't quite hit the highs there. I was looking for price to come and retest the resistance up here. Hasn't quite done that. It's still above the trend line here. So I'll still be favoring buys for EuroCAD until we break below 1.34. If we break below this structure, that's when I think, okay, EuroCAD could be in its next bearish leg and maybe see a continuation of this higher time frame bearish trend. If we do break below this 1.34 and that trend line essentially. But as of right now, we're not doing that. So the buys is still the best bet for me. Still looking to push this one higher. I would say keep an eye out on these areas here. If you can drop back into this level here, 1.34, that'll be some nice buys. Of course, that'll be for next week as well. But buys around 1.345 will look good. 1.346. Looking for that next leg to the upside, or even better, if we get above this level here, which is what we're struggling to break through right now and most of last week as well. If we can get above this at 1.356, retest it, longs there do look very, very good in my opinion, and just see a completion of the range that the market was fluctuating so many times here previously not last week, a few months ago. As you can see, up, down, up, down, up, down, and the market does repeat itself all the time. So if we do see a continuation above that level, a retest of that, and buys into 1.375 do look good, or at least back to these highs anyway, which is around the 1.366 mark. So if you're looking at EuroCAD, this level is a level of interest. Keep an eye out for that. If you do come lower, the buys will look good. Maybe catch that next swing to the upside as well. So do keep an eye out for those levels there for EuroCAD. But the buys for this one is still to the upside as long as we're above 1.34.
Make sure you guys check out the links in the description if you need broker recommendations, access to our free Discord, or want to chat with us on Telegram. If you're interested in our trading software, the EdgeFinder, you can find that in the description as well. Thanks for watching.